last time we looked at image processing and we calculated the inverse of the Mona Lisa using RGB, red, green and blue components of each of the pixels of the image. This time we're going to look at the other color model, HSB. So it's a little more tricky to work with HSB, but we start from the same point. We get the RGB components, and then we'll need a float array, which I'll call HSB, and that is equal to this routine, color.rgb to HSB, and we give it the RGB values, and this fourth parameter I'll make null. So now we have in HSB 0 we have the U, and in HSB 1 we have the saturation, and in HSS 2 we have the brightness, and we're not going to need those. So for the first transformation, I am not going to change any of those three values. I'm just going to create a new color, color.getHSBColor, and this method asks that we supply the H, S and B values, and for H I'm going to keep the same U, so the color will be the same, but I'm going to push up the saturation to 1 and I'm going to push up the brightness to 1. So essentially the colors stay the same, except we push the brightness and saturation to the limits. Let's see what that does. Save and run. Aha! And we get a tie-dyed Mona Lisa. You can actually see that a lot more detail has been revealed by this process. And clearly this is not exactly an artistic image. So let's try something else. Let's push the saturation up to 1, but I'll keep the brightness at the same level. So we'll keep that at 2, and let's run again. So in some sense we are not changing the color at all, but we're changing the intensity of the color in the image. One other thing you can do with HSB is to rotate the colors around so that we move from red to green to blue, and we can do that by, we'll keep the saturation at the same level, but before we call that method we will push around the color to a different part of the spectrum. So I'm going to add 0.5. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that almost looks like the time we swapped the red and green and blue components around. But essentially I've rotated the image through the color spectrum, and this doesn't look very nice for the Mona Lisa, but for images with more pronounced colors we can actually see this more clearly. So I have an image here by the modern artist Joseph Albers, and you can see it's mostly red with some cyan in the middle, and if we rotate the colors of this we get a very different effect. So I'm just temporarily going to change this to Albers 01.jpg, and I'm going to save and run, and you can see we get a very different color profile in this picture. And let's change this to 0.25, save and run. Okay, so we can modify the color profile, so to speak, of the image by rotating it through the color spectrum.